Hi. I've just had the pleasure of seeing an excellent video that's all about profiling ENFP with respect to an analysis, an integrative analysis of all of the different cognitive functions in the conscious part of the cognitive function stack for that type. And I just want to do a little shout out about it because I think it's very, very good and very, very accurate. And there are some things in there that I have not heard said anywhere else or described anywhere else. It's Scott Morgan's post about ENFP. It's recent, and that's on his channel, Introvert Power. He himself is an INFJ and is a registered counselor and certified MBTI practitioner. And he shares some terrific insights in that. And it made me think of something, a little inspiration for this video of mine. And just before I do that, sorry, I'm starting with a tangent, but while I'm on the topic of ENFP being portrayed very accurately and with very insightful detail, I also would say that another person who is doing, other than Michael Pierce, he doesn't need, he's so famous, doing brilliant work on profiling everybody. Another person, they're all INFJs as it turns out. Another person who's who has made a lot of videos about ENFP and has been sharing a lot of observations and insight about that type that I think are completely accurate and that I have not heard anyone else talking about is Eric Thor. So ENFPs, if you want to see someone who's really another presenter who's talking about our type in a lot more detail than most people do, I would really recommend those guys. All right, now back to this. I do like to talk about, I do like to do armchair typing with and talk about people's characters and psychology and observations about people's natures with all my friends, lots of NF friends. I have, and I like to, but the ones that are knowledgeable at all about the MBTI are INFJs. And there's one INFJ friend, who I talk with about this stuff a lot. And what I found is that it's very fun for me to talk with them about type-related stuff and trying to discern who's what, because yeah, they have a very, very, again, not only do they often have so many incredible insights to share, but and things that they perceive about people, but it's also fascinating because it seems like their perceptual apparatus it's a very different kind. I think it's true. It's a very different kind from everybody's, but what's interesting is how, I've mentioned this before in other videos, how it is that my INFJ friends and we can arrive at the same conclusion about something, but the way we got there was completely different. And it's quite nice in how, this one friend I'm thinking of who I do have these kinds of conversations with often. He's told me that he finds it very affirming in a way. He feels that his NI, which is so often overlooked and misunderstood, is very affirmed by, like, the kinds of things that it can tell. He finds it very affirming that someone with, the objective NE is seeing the same, is arriving at the same thing and can kind of confirm what insights his NI has come up with. It's pretty neat. It's pretty cool. Anyway, in talking with INFJs about these sorts of things, what I've come to begin to understand is that it seems like the way INFJs often perceive people is almost like they're using echolocation, the way bats do. In other words, of course they're using their eyes, of course, but those that see well, they're using that to take in the information about other people. But it's almost like when they're like feeling and they're getting that, they're doing that kind of penetrating observation that those people do in particular. It's almost like it's blind though, like it's certainly not like the way they're kind of feeling people out, like they're feeling people out. And I'm sure I know their eyes are part of that, taking in that information. But the way an ENFP will do it is predictably with the very objective bias that we have, thanks to our cognitive function stack with our NE dominant, and then there's also the TE down the way in the tertiary position. we're, yeah, I mean, when I'm typing people, I'm doing my armchair typing, my eyes are giving me a lot of information and I'm making a lot of connections with that information. Um, and so it is the case that I can very often, it's been proven often enough that I can be confident saying that I am exceptionally good at typing people visually. I am make lots of mistakes though too, so it's not, it's not something to, it's something that needs to be investigated, but it really has been proven over and over again that I'm quite good at discerning a lot of things accurately a lot of the time when it comes to type characteristics. And it's hard, but the funny thing is that objective as it is, this use of any, always like darting around looking for patterns all over the place, it's hard for me to explain those sometimes. I mean, a lot of my videos are about these sort of concrete reality, observation of based phenomena. But there's something else too that I can't quite account for on that level, but it's something I'm doing. I can confirm that I can see things type-wise in people very often, but when it comes to explaining how I can see it, it's hard to get it across. I'm about to attempt to do a little bit of it right now. We'll see if any of it works. For example, like I can't at all explain how it is that I often can see whether someone's an F or not. There's this kind of warmth that usually if someone, even if they're very introverted, I can usually detect a kind of emotional warmth there that's nonverbal, and that is, but somehow I can detect it, and I can't explain how I can detect it, and I'm usually right. Sometimes I'm wrong, but I'm about 80% of the time I'm right. It turns out, where it's been verified, which is, it has been many times. There's another thing I say too, is that's even easier to determine for me, is whether someone's an introvert or not. And part of how I do that, or a big way that I do that, is it's in the gaze. I'll try and explain this now, if see if anyone else can get it. I don't know. And I have some analogies that might get it across, like what I'm seeing, how I'm seeing that. What I say is that with extroverts, it's like the person is coming out of their face. Like they're kind of, their energy is like is so expressive. It's coming out. It's coming out of their eyes. It's coming out of their mouth. In my case, many chatty extroverts. There's this. It's almost like their energy is like coming for you. I know I'm a really extreme example of that, being an ENFP and being ADHD and whatever I am. I have a exceptional amount of energy, and I have an exceptional lack of inhibition and filtering that neurotypical people would have. So my energy is really like, woo, it's really pouring out, but in a very obvious way. But that with extroverts, that's something that we have generally, and I can see it. It's very, very clear. What I see in introverts is that they might be doing, it's in the eyes. Again, especially ones with a lot of FE, like INFJs, who are, mingling in a crowd and making conversation with people and being so gracious as they are. It's in the eyes. There's a look in the eyes that's an introverted look that I really think that I can see. It's like, and the analogy I use is that it's almost like the person, like the soul of the person in an introvert, what you see in their eyes, no matter what their face is doing, their face could be moving all around, and they could be being very forthcoming and chatty. But the look in the eyes, it's almost like the soul is sitting by a windowsill in a, through an opening at the top of a tower. So it's them, they're really looking at you, but they're just a bit recessed. There's like, and I don't know how to explain it objectively, that's as close as I've been able to come so far. It's like that. It's like they're looking out from a tower. And you can, and if they like you and they would like to, have you be closer to them, it's like they stay there and they kind of make it, they draw the curtain back, and then they come closer they come to the windowsill, and then they sit on the windowsill and then to talk to you, but there's that sense of that's what they're doing. They're not like wide open. But they are open. It's just that they're sitting in the windowsill. I mean, that's really the powerful image for me that makes sense of it to me, what it is I'm seeing. And I had it because of Scott Morgan's video and what it made me think of. I have further refinement on that, which is this FII thing. I just had to laugh because I immediately knew what he was talking about. Just because I have so many INFJ, INFJ, yes, I have INFJ dear ones, and I also have a lot of INFP dear ones, and they do have quite a stare, those INFPs. So yes, an FI Dom, like when an FI Dom is quietly looking at you, it's a very powerful thing that you can feel. It's again, they're still introverts, they're still in the windowsill, but they are looking right out. And I find this to be a bit of a differentiator between INFJ and INTJ. Another reason why now that I know so much more about FE and FI than I used to, but I didn't even used to know about that at all. I didn't know about the cognitive functions for most of the time I've been interested in MBTI. And just typing all over the place. But this is a really good differentiator now, I think, is that it's because of the FI. That's how I can tell. That's how I can tell often now. It's a big part of how I can tell an INTJ who has, say, a very kind of distinctive presentation that I've come to recognize as a very typical physical presentation in terms of fashion and whatever. I find that there's what I talked about in the positive ID video about spotting INJs in the wild. There is this minoritarian but very distinctive look that I've come to recognize. When I see it, I'm like, oh, it's one or the other. Like it's just definitely it's one or the other, and it's been proven correct in many cases. But the way I would differentiate further now, knowing what I do, is to look at the FE-FI difference. Which I went into in the video all about the most effective the single most effective INFJ differentiator. It's the FE, and I would say that this FII thing, that FI is part of the so-called INTJ death stare. Like, I don't find it to be a death stare, but whatever. I guess people are more intimidated by INTJs than they should be. I think there are too many. But anyway, side note. They're not. Here's the thing, like if they don't want you around and they don't want to talk to you, then they just will not be around you. So there's no point in being scared of them and being all worried about them, because if they're spending, again, like the other INTs, if they're spending any discretionary time with you, it's because they think you have something to offer. So it's silly if you are in that situation, it's very silly to think that that they're so big, they're all mean and scary and out to get you, because they're not. And the death stare, it's not. I think part of the so-called death stare, I mean, what it is it's an intense look. It's a very intelligent and very present look. And I think part of that present quality of it, that's so direct and it's cool. It's cool, but it's also passionate in a way, in a very control, like self-possessed kind of way. Yeah, more like a self-possessed kind of way. When they look at you, like really look at you. And again, if they're looking at you, they're really looking at you. You know, it's not a wandery gaze. It's like the P's have, like I have, to such a degree. And the FI part of that present quality is this kind of, here I am, here I am. And just this kind of, again, authentic, no apologies kind of presentation of the self. And the INTJs have that as well. And I think part of it is because of their, FI. It's not the only factor, of course, but it's one of them. At least in a minor capacity, it is. And so here's a refinement. I would take that Scott Morgan's invocation of this term FIIs, that passionate and very passionate and self-possessed and very direct kind of gaze. It's intense. It's very intense. I'd say for the FI heavy introverts, there's that, they have that. But the way I think of it for the INFJs or the heavy heavy FE people is it's almost like their gazes can be very intense too, in my experience, very intense. But there is a slightly different quality, and again, it's so subjective. I don't know how to explain it. But I'm perceiving it somehow, and the best I can do is to sort of say an analogy for that is it can be a very intense gaze, and it's a very penetrating look, but it's almost as if it's coming up through SLR, like it's the FI one is right at the window, so to speak, with an introvert. Like the soul is at the windowsill looking out at you, but they're right there at the edge of it. Whereas for with the INFJs, and sometimes I feel more like it is a very strong gaze, but it's kind of being bounced around as if like SLR system of mirrors through a camera and then coming out at you. So that's what it came to me today. Anyhow, that's all I had to say for now. Thank you for watching. Bye.